In this video, I want to talk about a very famous painting, The Kiss, by Gustav Klimt. Now, it is my opinion that The Kiss multi-referenced the artist Caravaggio. And this is not in any books, this is my opinion, but take a look and see what you think. For me, the definition of multi-referencing is when an artist takes small bits from several works of art by another artist and incorporates them into a single picture. To me, this is the main technique of master artists that has been used for centuries. I showed 2 videos of Leonardo da Vinci using the multi-reference technique 4 centuries before The Kiss. Multi-referencing allows you to say more than what's just in the picture by referring to other artwork. And it also showcases your ability as a master artist, and it also pays homage to the artist that you're multi-referencing. Now, I believe that Gustav Klimt multi-referenced all of the artwork of Caravaggio in The Kiss, but I'm going to show you 10 examples here. And this first comparison that I want you to look at is Caravaggio's Boy Bitten by a Lizard, which was done in 1593 and 1594. It's at the Fondazione Roberto Longhi in Florence, Italy. Sorry, butchered that pronunciation. But the first thing that jumps out at me is the bare shoulder of the boy bitten by a lizard and how it's similar to the bare shoulder of the woman in The Kiss. This is something that I consider to be one of the bigger clues or big breadcrumb. So if I were looking at The Kiss and then looking at Boy Bitten by a Lizard, seeing the bare shoulder would make me think maybe he's multi-referencing Caravaggio, and I would look at other Caravaggios to see if there are references in The Kiss, which there are. Next, take a look at the left hand of the boy bitten by a lizard and how it compares with the left hand of the woman in The Kiss. A very similar thumb and index finger, which would also make me look at possible Caravaggio multi-referencing. There are flowers and foliage in both paintings, and the red tomatoes in the bottom part of Boy Bitten by a Lizard is similar to the red circles on the woman's gown in The Kiss. The boy's face in Boy Bitten by a Lizard is also facing directly at the viewer, much like the woman is in The Kiss. The ripples in the fishbowl of the boy bitten by a lizard is similar to the spirals in the lower right-hand corner of the Gustav Klimt's The Kiss. And finally, comparing these two pictures, the boy bitten by a lizard in his right hand has his middle finger sort of truncated from the shadow and comes together with his ring finger, much like the woman's right hand, which is on the man's neck in The Kiss, has a truncated index finger and 2 fingers coming together in the middle of her hand. Now looking at Caravaggio's The Martyrdom of St. Matthew, which was done around 1599 to 1600. It's at the San Luigi dei Franceschi in Rome. In the Caravaggio, we see St. Matthew on his side with his face horizontal, much like the face of the woman in The Kiss. The Martyrdom of St. Matthew also shows some black rectangles on the right shoulder of St. Matthew himself and also in the upper left-hand corner in the background, similar to the black rectangles on the man's clothing in The Kiss. Caravaggio also has 2 figures in the lower right-hand corner with their heads facing away from the viewer, where you can just see a bit of their face and the back of their head, much like the man in The Kiss. Next, looking at Caravaggio's Rest in the Flight into Egypt, done in 1594 to 1596. It's at the Galleria Doria Pamphilj in Rome. And then looking at references to The Kiss, the first thing that strikes me is that they both use the same palette, the same group of colors. The Madonna and baby Jesus in the Caravaggio have their heads very close together, much like the couple in The Kiss, And the Madonna also has her head tilted and facing toward the viewer, much like the woman in the kiss. And both women have their eyes closed. The wing of the angel makes vertical rectangles, much like the vertical rectangles of the man's clothing in the kiss. The angel in the Caravaggio painting has a bare left shoulder, much like the bare left shoulder of the woman in the kiss, but at a different angle. The angel also has a bent left elbow, like the bent left elbow of the woman in the kiss. And another reference is Joseph's right hand grasping the music is kind of similar to the man's right hand grasping the woman in the Klimt painting, The Kiss. And now looking at references with the painting Bacchus, done in 1593 and 1594 by Caravaggio. It's at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Here Bacchus is showing a bare shoulder, a bent elbow, and also the rings of his wine glass is similar to the spirals of the lower right-hand corner in the kiss. Also, both Caravaggio's Bacchus and the man in the kiss have leaves in their hair. The bowl of fruit in the kiss makes several oval or round objects close together, much like some of the decoration in the woman's garb in the kiss. Next, let's look at the beheading of St. John the Baptist by Caravaggio. Done in 1608, it's at the Catholic Co-Cathedral in Valletta, Malta. Here, St. John's head faces the viewer in a kind of a mirror image to the woman in the kiss. St. John the Baptist does not appear to be putting up much of a fight, but pretty much accepting his fate, kind of like the woman in the kiss, and an interesting analogy where you can connect the references to tell more of the story. The man getting ready to behead St. John has his right elbow bent, much like the left elbow of the woman in the kiss. The woman in the Caravaggio painting that's holding the silver plate has her head down at a sort of similar angle as the man in the kiss. Black rectangles can be seen in the background in the Caravaggio, sort of like the black rectangles in the man's garb in the kiss. And now looking at possibly Caravaggio's most famous painting, The Calling of St. Matthew, done in 1599 and 1600. It's at the San Luigi de Franceschi in Rome. In the Caravaggio, the man who is seated wearing black and white, facing away from the viewer, looking to the right like everyone is, has his head very similar to the man in the kiss. Several dark rectangles can be seen in the Calling of St. Matthew on the man in black and white sleeve, on the window up at the top, similar to the black rectangles in the kiss on the man's clothing. The window in the top background of the Caravaggio also makes dark yellow rectangles, which is also seen in the man's garb in the kiss. Now looking at Caravaggio's Supper at Emmaus, done around 1600. It's at the National Gallery in London. And the man seated wearing dark green in the lower left-hand corner has a very similar angle of view of his head as the man in the kiss. The bowl of fruit on the table in the Supper at Emmaus is very similar to the group of circles on the woman's clothing in the kiss. And Jesus faces the viewer with his eyes closed, much like the woman in the kiss. And finally, the man in the lower right-hand corner at the Supper of Emmaus has his arms outstretched, and his left sleeve makes concentric circles kind of similar to the spirals in the lower right-hand corner of the kiss. And now looking at Caravaggio's Sacrifice of Isaac, done in 1594 to 1596. It's at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Italy. Here, Isaac's head is turned to the side and faces the viewer, like the woman in the kiss. Isaac's bare shoulder has a knife going across the upper arm, and it's similar to the curved shape of the woman's clothing in the kiss, just below her bare shoulder. Caravaggio painted the goat in the lower right-hand corner with its curved yellow horn with a dark color of its fur just below that, similar to the curve of yellow in the top right of the kiss with the woman's brown hair just below it. Now here's The Fortune Teller by Caravaggio, done around 1594. It's at the Louvre Museum in Paris. All images shown in this video are from Wikimedia Commons website, wikimediacommons.com, I believe, and the York Project within that website by Direct Media. And now looking at The Fortune Teller, the man's dark hat is very similar to the round, dark hair of the man in the kiss. The end of the handle of the man's sword in the Caravaggio has an oval shape, much like the ovals in the woman's clothing in the kiss, and the circular sword guard in the Caravaggio on his sword is similar to the swirls in the lower right-hand corner of the kiss. Not many references in this painting, but just to show you how even just a few references can suffice an artist that's multi-referencing another artist to say that's a reference, and then going on to the next artwork by the same artist. An artist may only reference a small part of a certain artwork, but at some point in the artwork of the artist that's being referenced, they'll have an obvious reference to make you know that this is an artist that's being multi-referenced. So this is just a small sample that I'm showing you of Caravaggio's work, but I believe that Gustav Klimt multi-referenced all of Caravaggio's work, at least all that he could find, which is probably most of it. So take a look at other work by Caravaggio and see if you find references to Gustav's The Kiss. Now the last painting by Caravaggio, which I want to show you as a possible reference to The Kiss, is Madonna of the Rosary, done in 1606 and 1607 by Caravaggio. It's at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, Austria. Here the Madonna is facing the viewer but looking away, and she very closely resembles the face of the woman in the kiss. Several figures at the lower right of the Caravaggio look away from the viewer like the man in the kiss. Caravaggio has a red cloth draped across the top of the painting that has a curve at the bottom like the curve of the red lips on the woman in the kiss. The pillar in the upper left-hand corner of Madonna of the Rosary is alternating dark and light rectangles, tall and thin like the many vertical rectangles on the man's clothing in the kiss. Also, some rectangles in the clothing on the kiss are black with white surrounding or white with black surrounding, both referencing the pillar in the Caravaggio. Now, I'd be very interested to hear what you viewers think about all this. If you would leave some constructive comments in the comments, I appreciate it, and thanks for watching.